Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about caring about your work. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, when do software engineers stop caring as much about their work? Well, it usually happens either when they're dealing with someone who pisses them off, like a manager or like a company that they don't feel like committed to, like companies who have policies or do weird things that seem a little bit iffy to them, or like they can be underpaid, etc., etc. But it's usually more of a emotional thing than a monetary thing. And then the other case is when they feel as if they're blocked constantly or forced to write bad code or forced to work in a way that is uncomfortable to them. There are many ways to achieve this. The two primary ones is when they work with a lot of dependencies, like they have a lot of dependencies to other people, like a really slow work process, and or when they have an incompetent product owner or manager or something like that sort of always forces them to work on very sharp deadlines or like hack things together. It's called the broken window principle, where the code starts to rot and then it just keeps on rotting because they never feel like they can have a chance to fix it or keep it nice or do things in a way that feels sustainable to them. These are the two main situations, I would say. So when it comes to the sustainability thing, where like you want to keep things clean, the problem with software developers is that they usually, to a certain degree, care about doing a good job. And it's actually funny because most people do that. Even, I mean, I work with people, and I have worked with people who work in the in the support area of IT companies, and they talk to customers and so forth. And a lot of the people who work in the call centers and so forth, at least in my region, they generally care about giving the users or like the people calling in a good experience and helping people out for real. And it is soul crushing to them when the company has a policy or something like that that doesn't really help the customer or so forth and so forth, because they genuinely care. And the software developers are similar about their code, or like a carpenter about their craft, etc., etc. You want to feel like you're doing a good job, or at least a decent job. And when you're in a situation where you don't really feel like you can do that due to circumstances, it usually sets in as apathy, or frustration at the very least. The apathy usually happens when you have a lot of dependencies and blockers for being able to do things. That's the big apathy creator, in my experience. This is more, apathy sets in to a degree here as well, but it's more when you have so much legacy that everything feels ugly and you just don't care anymore. You just want to ship things and go home because you're getting paid, but you no longer care about how well the product is doing, for example. And the other case, as I was mentioning, is when there's a lot of dependencies. If you have a process where the software developers, say for doing anything, either they have to go to another team or they have to send out emails to other support staff or things like that, then like the feedback cycle is really, really long, etc., etc. That's usually also when they stop caring as much about their work. Because simply put, they can't actually go from thought to execution. They have to go from thought to send email, wait for a few hours or a few days. Hopefully you will get an answer, and if you don't, you have to send another email, and then keep track of that thing over time. I am amazed at how anything gets done in the larger corporations that I've worked in at all, due to this very slow feedback cycle, together paired with the fact that most people don't have the personal structure to handle a slow moving process. I've been giving my coworkers the tip because they've come to me and felt that I had some good ideas around this, where I've said to people, you know that Trello board or that Kanban board that we're using? That's actually a really good idea, not just for the team. It's a very good idea for you personally. And so if you have a lot of these sorts of like slow moving tasks, it's sort of like creating a queue. That is what you're doing. You are sending out a request for someone to fix something on your behalf, but you can't sit and wait for them. You have to do other stuff as well, so you need to parallelize. What do? Well, you have to create a reminder of some sort that represents the fact that you have requested this, and then move on to the next task. That is what a Kanban board does. It is exactly what it's there for, so that you can know what the state of different pieces of work are. It's just that it's your personal board instead of everybody else's board. And so by doing something simple as creating like a column that's called dependencies that I like to do, you simply say that, hey, I reached out to these people, they were going to get back to me, or I'm going to try to re-ping them again in X amount of time, and then you put a label or like a counter on it saying that, yeah, you give them 24 hours or a few days or something like that, and then you repeat that process. This is how I, as someone who has to manage multiple stakeholders, teams, and etc., and do the coding as well, manages to not have to stress at all, because I don't have to think about how many things I have ongoing at the same time. I can have 100 things ongoing because I don't have to think about them, because I took the time to write it down with timers, and like I queued everything up. And then I start every morning by just re-pinging the people who haven't gotten back to me and go through the list. And then when there is no more stuff to go through and no more things to add to the queue, I move on to doing the fun stuff, which is usually coding or helping my teammates or something like that. And I like to make the analogy, I said it to my product owner the other day, which is supposed to be the guy who's the best at this, yet he doesn't do this, which is hilarious to me. I explained to him, think of it as doing a good old-fashioned chess over post. You know, if you ask your grandparents, they might have played chess with someone over, like sending letters to each other, and they have set up their board at home, and the other person sets up their board on wherever they are, and then you send your move as part of a nice little letter to that person, and then you play a game that can take years. That is exactly how you structure your process in order to solve that sort of situation. Because unfortunately, if you don't do that, you're going to have to try to remember all this stuff, or more likely, which is the case that I see all the time, you are going to feel demotivated, and you're going to feel like this, everything takes forever, and you're going to sit there and be frustrated and think, like, put your cognitive resources on feeling bad or being annoyed at everything taking so much time. And this is where I see most people fall into the pit of disaster and depression and all of that stuff, because they let this sort of inefficiency in our world get to them. And I'm just here to tell you guys, if the world worked as well as it possibly could, most of the problems that we have today, they wouldn't exist in the first place. But the world is not going to change because you get pissed off at that things are ineffective, and it's better for you to focus on making constructive things happen, as opposed of allowing yourself to get to an emotional state where you no longer care about anything. So what I want you to take away from this is that software engineers usually stop caring about their work, either when the company is doing things that are a little bit iffy, that's not as common, but it does happen, or more likely when they feel apathetic towards the work that they do, and that is usually when they either are killed by dependencies, they can never do anything without having like a million people having to be involved, and like everything takes a million years, and there's a lot of extra bureaucracy and red tape and administrative work, etc. A lot of just sitting around waiting for people to reply to you and going on the hunt for finding people who know something about the thing you're supposed to do. The thing that gets me is when my story cards are so ill written by my product owners or my stakeholders that I don't actually know what the fuck they want me to make. And that pisses me off, because then I have to go and talk again. I need to go and ask them, can you please explain to me what this weird thing that you wrote actually means? Because I can't make code from your little scribbles that mean nothing. You have to take the time to actually help me so that I can do something. Because what's the point of writing this down if you're not going to do it in a way that is comprehensible to somebody else, right? And the other part are usually people who are forced to work in really shitty code. You're forcing people to write consistently, like on short deadlines or ad hoc things, etc., etc. And when something gets so ugly, it's sort of like it is what the broken window principle is all about. If a building has one broken window, it starts out that way and gets a little bit worse, and then there's a second one, and then a third one, and before you know it, the whole building looks like shit, and nobody cares about it because the sensation of value towards the building has dropped because it's so ill maintained that you stop caring altogether. So you have to fix the first broken window so that people keep on feeling like this is a useful or like a nice building. That is the idea behind it. Have a great day.